In case you missed the drama over the weekend, Kevin McCarthy finally wrested control of the House Speaker's gavel after 15 votes, giving up the store to far-right holdouts to get there. After a week of Republicans proving they are not fit to govern. As we speak, they are dealing with the basics of organizing Congress. Just moments ago, passing a new House rules package for MAGA extremists. It includes a new rule allowing one member to force a vote of no confidence in the Speaker, along with steep spending cuts and changes to rules on raising the debt limit, all of which McCarthy promised in order to win over the far-right holdouts. Meanwhile, the investigations that Republicans are preparing to launch are equally disturbing. Among them, what can only be called a kangaroo court that will soon target the Department of Justice and the FBI, the president's son, Hunter Biden, and a judiciary subcommittee on, quote, weaponization of the federal government. The proposed panel, chaired by Jim Jordan, would be empowered to review, quote, ongoing criminal investigations, presumably into Donald Trump's many alleged crimes. But you've got to wonder if one of them will be a future investigation into Jim Jordan. Joining me now from the Capitol is Sahil Kapoor, an NBC News senior national political reporter, and Maura Gillespie, former aide to Congressman Adam Kinzinger and Speaker John Boehner. Thank you both for being here. Sahil, I do want to start with you. This rules package is pretty draconian, not only allowing that one member to vote as a vote of no confidence, but also these cut-as-you-go budget requirements and some other things that are mainly seem to be targeting spending on social services. What went down, and was it a unanimous vote on the Republican side?
Not exactly a unanimous vote, Joy. There was one Republican, Tony Gonzalez of Texas, who voted no. He had announced several days ago that he would do that, but he was the only Republican who voted no. Everyone else stuck with the caucus and voted yes on this package, and it passed by a vote of 220 to 213 with every Democrat voting no. Now, there are two particularly notable things about this. It brings back the rule that any one member can force a motion to vacate the chair, also known as overthrowing the Speaker of the House. This was a problem for Republicans back in the days of Speaker John Boehner when the House ultimately got rid of it because it made it too difficult for the House to function, for a Speaker to govern. This was a demand by the right-wing holdouts because they want to keep Speaker McCarthy on a short leash here and make sure that he doesn't cross them with the demands. The second, Joy, and you alluded to this, there are various budgetary restrictions in this package. It makes it harder to raise spending. It creates a new 3/5 requirement to raise taxes, and it most notably makes it harder to raise the debt limit by eliminating these sort of end runs that Congress has used in the past to protect members from tough votes. This is a major confrontation coming down the road because this is not an optional piece of legislation. It has to happen to prevent a catastrophic default. And at the moment, I can't quite figure out how the Republican-controlled House, where these right-wing holdouts who almost sunk Kevin McCarthy's Speaker bid have so much influence, can reconcile with a Democratic-controlled Senate and be signed into law by President Biden. But look, big picture, this was the easy part for Speaker McCarthy, getting the votes to become Speaker, passing the rules resolution. What comes next is much, much harder, governing with this wafer-thin majority, Joy.
Right. And more, this brings you into this conversation because, Matt Gaetz said their goal was to put McCarthy in a straitjacket. Well, they did that because, as you know very well, on the one hand, you worked for Adam Kinzinger. We're looking down the barrel of steep defense cuts. If they play this game the way they've laid it out, there could be very steep cuts to the Defense Department budget. Now, some folks on the liberal side may be like, go strong, do it, right? It's something that you normally can't do. But you're also talking about real questions about whether Ukraine funding will remain as it is. A lot of Americans are not going to look very well on that. And with all the crises, China, et cetera. And then on the other side, I watch enough Lawrence O'Donnell to know there's a such thing called a must-pass bill. A must-pass bill is like the debt limit. If you default on the debt limit, we go into a deep, deep recession or worse. So how does Kevin McCarthy manage to, with a lot less skills than John Boehner, pass a debt limit bill without getting recalled?
And I think that's the big question with this motion to vacate the chair as a weapon, essentially looming over his head, especially with the debt ceiling. That's going to be a real issue. And it's going, unfortunately, I think, with a Senate-led a Democratic-led Senate and Democratic White House, it will require a few moderate Republicans likely to stand up and say, we will not let the full faith and credit of the government, the U.S. government, be threatened. Now, again, I think a few members have talked about that. Rep. Brian Fitzpatrick has mentioned that they would do a discharge petition should that come to that scenario. But one thing I want to mention the rules. Obviously, there are a lot of things that that are concerning, to say the least. But there are some positives that I do think are worth mentioning. The end of proxy voting. I'm hopeful, maybe I'm just being a super optimist here, but that by ending proxy voting, it'll allow members to come back to Washington, D.C. and build relationships. It's a lot easier to look on a Zoom call and point to someone and say, I won't work with that person, or I disagree with them, than it is to sit in a committee hearing room next to that person, get to know them as a human and not as an enemy.
And that's a good point, because and I think, and I mentioned defense spending. There have been a lot of, liberal folks out here that for a long time have said the Defense Department budget is bloated and should be cut, and it's been a big no-no. But it looks like, if you're really committed to cutting spending, that's where a lot of the bulk is in the budget. But do you just talk a little bit about when you were experiencing working specifically for Speaker Boehner? Did you get the sense that Tea Party members who came in on this zeal to cut social spending, to cut Social Security, to cut Medicare, to cut Medicaid, to cut food stamps, that they understood that there was an implication to that? Or do you think that they cared about the implications of that or cutting military spending?
In my personal opinion, I think a lot of these members come in because they've told their constituents they're going to cut everything, and they don't think about the implications. A lot of members also come in and think that they're going to run Congress on day one, and that's not reality, because they don't understand how it works. They don't understand how to govern, let alone how to govern effectively. So back then at the Freedom Caucus, and we had members who simply did things simply to go then campaign off of or to go fundraise off of. And so a lot of it doesn't really come down to the nickel and diming of things, because they don't actually look through the full picture of what those nickel and diming does to our economy, but also to our, like you said, our programs, our defense spending, our ability to, counter China's influence, our ability to support allies like Ukraine. They're not thinking through in a full picture.
Yeah, and Sahil, here's the irony, right? There's a lot of complaint in the Republican Party about the border, for instance. But if you're really going to fix the border issue, that would mean more spending, because you'd need to spend more on foreign aid, assisting the governments of places like Guatemala and Honduras to stand up their economy so that people won't need to leave. There are things you'd have to do that would cost money. And so, I wonder if there are conversations that you are hearing from members either on the Democratic side or the Republican side of whether these hardline members are going to be allowed to stop the rest of the party from doing anything, because it sounds as if they just want to bring the whole body to a halt and investigate Hunter Biden.
Well, Joy, there are mechanisms, even in this new Republican House, with these new rules where the House could theoretically raise spending. They would have to cut other things. The problem is it's very, very difficult to do that at this point in a way that the Democratic Senate can accept, in a way that President Biden can sign into law. And this is where I think Speaker McCarthy is going to be the most hamstrung, even if there is an issue, like I believe immigration and the border is, where Republicans have some political advantages that they can try to exploit with a Democratic-controlled Senate, especially ahead of a very difficult 2024 election. They're going to have to do it in a way where they compromise some as well, because they simply can't get everything they want in this House and in this Congress with, Joe Biden as president. And last weekend, it showed two very important things. It showed that the 20 most conservative members of the House Republican caucus are willing to stand on the floor and humiliate their own party's leadership. And it also showed that the most moderate members of the House Republican Conference are not going to stand up and object to it. You didn't hear anybody ultimately, except Tony Gonzalez, stand up and say, we're not going to accept these concessions. If you give them everything they want, then you're going to lose us. It just didn't happen. There isn't that same mentality, to flex power on the moderate end of the Republican conference. And that will be a dynamic going forward, because, yes, members like Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick do think the debt limit has to be raised. The question is, how are they going to be able to do it if they're not willing to put the screws to the right flank the way, the right flank is to them?
And meanwhile, Maura, I'm going to give you the last word on this. You had Marjorie Taylor Greene, who styles herself now in charge of this House, tweeting out like Dr. Dre music and getting smacked down by Dr. Dre saying, get my music out of your tweets, and I think had her Twitter shut down for it. But is that the sense that you had when you were working? It wasn't as bad, but it seems like it's gotten worse, that it's all performative, that what these members see as their job is to get on Fox News, to own the libs, to tweet things, and that they really don't think about actual legislating? I
would say yes. I think, obviously with our caucus of rabble-rousers and, as John Boehner called them, the Chaos Caucus. It was different then. It was not to this extreme where you now have people who are running on platforms simply to become famous for being an antagonist. That is what they ran on. And that's something that we hadn't seen before. So we're dealing with a whole new breed of chaos.
Yeah.
But the goals are the same, is to obstruct the work of the House and say it's for the benefit of the American people, but it's not. It's for them.
Yeah. And the new wrinkle is these are people who, some of whom engaged in insurrection and tried to overthrow the government. And now what they got for that is more power. It is a wild time to be alive. Sahil Kapoor, thank you very much. This simulation is just all messed up. Morgan Gillespie, thank you both for being here.